Hi, I'm Greg from In5D, and today I'm going to be doing a quick synopsis, yet also doing a deep dive into I Can't Even Productions' Super Bowl video. So let's jump right in. But before we start, be sure to visit I Can't Even Productions' Instagram page and subscribe to his work, which is brilliant. In the previous video, it opens up with a scene from Eyes Wide Shut, where the anonymous elite gather for secret rituals. In this particular scene, they're in a magic circle, which is a key element of occult symbolism. Now, in the first major scene of this next video, it's not a circle, but it's a square. And if you dive deep into the symbolism of the black square, you'll find it's ultimately associated with the cult of Saturn, also known as Father Time, the Grim Reaper, Kronos, and Satan.
When you graduate, you come out with a square mortarboard, a black square mortarboard. What's all that about? It has to do with the planet Saturn. The holy city of Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. Mecca has a Masonic circle, and within the Masonic circle is a square. Is called the black square. That's why priests wear black. That's why judges wear black robes. Why do you think a judge wears a black robe? He wears a black robe because when you used to graduate from university, you wear a black robe. Black robes represent the priesthood of the planet Saturn.
As Jordan Maxwell says, the true meaning of graduation is gradual indoctrination. Yet most every religion has direct ties to Saturn. You can find a link that explains it all in the More Info section called Saturn, Why Are We Worshipping the Cult of El? So he then jumps on a stadium platform lift and is brought to the scene of this year's Super Bowl, specifically highlighting the New England Patriots team, featuring Coach Mike Vrabel. Pay attention to the Patriots. The masked man then hops on stage with this year's Super Bowl performer, Bad Bunny, who's wearing a humiliation ritual pink dress and making the one-eye symbolism while standing on a Masonic checkerboard floor. This scene implies how Freemasonry and, likely, MKUltra and Tavistock are playing into the power and influence the music industry has over its performers, often performing satanic shows and concerts. In the past, we've seen other male sports figures wearing female attire, including Dennis Rodman, Odell Beckham Jr., Russell Westbrook, and Joe Namath for wearing pantyhose.
Now, I don't wear pantyhose, but if beauty mist can make my legs look good, imagine what they'll do for yours.
Ain't no party like a Diddy party, so.
Yeah, that's what's up. That was stupid.
The NFL has formed partnerships with Diddy's Revolt TV network and Ciroc vodka brand to broaden its appeal and strengthen its brand. Now, if you didn't know, the NFL has been partnering with Jay-Z for the previous 5 years of halftime performances, and Jay-Z is also responsible for choosing Bad Bunny for this year's show. For more on the corruption between the NFL, Jay-Z, and P. Diddy, check out my video called How P. Diddy and Jay-Z Control Super Bowl Halftime Shows as part of Roger Goodell's NFL Woke Agenda. And you can find that on the In5D YouTube channel. Yeah, Bad Bunny is pushing the trans agenda. And did you know he's going to be the first musician to perform an entirely Spanish language set in an American city where our language is English, where the majority of people watching are listening to classic rock and country. What you cannot hear is the background song from 1963 called Then He Kissed Me by the Crystals, written by the abusive psycho Phil Spector. Remember that year, 1963. The next scene implies possible money laundering, but mainly how the National Football League is largely a club of millionaires, and you ain't in it.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
On his way to the next scene, you see another hooded, masked elite blending into the crowd, signifying that they're everywhere and conspicuously blending in wherever you may be. The next scene is at a Las Vegas casino sportsbook showing players from many different sports placing their bets. And you can bet some are betting against themselves. This scene exposes the sports mafia and how some games, if not many, may be rigged. Sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight.
Last season was a smash, but this year's script has to top it.
And sometimes they'll tell you in social media posts and on video.
Question, does the NFL really give you a script? They at least gave me a script. I don't want to speak for nobody else. I don't want to speak for the team, but they gave me a script. And unfortunately, when I read it, during camp, I'm like, bro, we can only win 3 games. I was pissed about that.
Just like the music industry, many famous sports figures also sold their soul. Our next scene shows the masked man with Michael Jordan, who's standing next to a slot machine called Moloch. But Moloch was misspelled as Molich near the masked man's right hand. Above the slot machine, you'll see a horned bull representing both Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls and Moloch. Moloch is the deity associated with child unliving. 3 dads show up on the slot machine screen, but I'm not sure what that implies. Jordan was married twice and fathered 5 children. If anyone knows the meaning of 3 dads or the misspelling of Moloch, let me know. The next scene is in Joe Namath's Bachelor's 3 Club, where we see from left to right Joe Namath in the fur coat, Dean Martin, who often went to celebrity hangouts like this and was linked to mob-associated Hollywood circles. Then we see the masked man, Lamar Hunt, who has ties to JFK theories via his father, H.L. Hunt, an oil tycoon, who was accused of funding Kennedy's assassination due to Kennedy's tax reforms hitting big oil. And on the far right is Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner, who investigated Bachelor's 3 for mob connections and pressured Namath to sell all of his stakes in it or retire. Now remember, JFK signed Executive Order 11110, which allowed the Treasury Secretary to continue issuing silver certificates while transitioning to the Federal Reserve notes. And since then, the petrodollar now has the purchasing power of 4 cents to every dollar, thanks to ending the gold standard, quantitative easing, compounded inflation, and increased government spending and debt. A lot of people think that JFK was in favor of commodity-based currency, but he was actually responsible for the commodity-backed dollar to go to its current fiat dollar position. Behind them are mob-like characters, one of which resembles Tommy Mancuso, but I'm really not sure. If you guys know any of these guys, let me know. The bottom line being implied is how celebrities, sports, gambling, and the mob are all tied together in this scene. And let's not forget Super Bowl III in 1969, where the Baltimore Colts were favored to beat the New York Jets by 18 points. Yet the Jets beat Baltimore 16-7. Despite being massive underdogs, Namath predicted a victory for the Jets. Do you think that game might have been fixed? The next scene has Lamar Hunt following the masked man into a room, featuring Jimmy Hoffa, the Teamster with connections to organized crime, Richard Nixon, who was in Dallas on November 21st, 1963, Lyndon B. Johnson, the B stands for Biatch, who allegedly orchestrated JFK's unlife, Cowboys founder Clint Murchison, and Lamar Hunt, the founding owner of the Dallas Texans, who moved to Kansas City and became the Chiefs in 1963. Hunt and Murchison were big oil tycoon families, and the previously mentioned big oil tax reforms were bad business for them. Lamar Hunt's father, H.L. Hunt, detested JFK for this, amongst other things. JFK's brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, aggressively prosecuted organized crime figures, while LBJ had alleged ties to Texas oil interests. and the military-industrial complex. In the background is a photo of JFK, tying it all together in a scene that implies they did it and got away with it. The next scene is the 2002 Super Bowl. In the background, you see the Twin Towers being attacked. The teams playing that year were the New England Patriots and the St. Louis Rams. The scene then moves to Tom Brady and the Patriots celebrating their Super Bowl victory. The masked man then takes a few steps over to pose with George W. Bush, who's holding papers for the Patriot Act. What a coincidence. The scene implies getting the world to align with the Patriot Act. Not just the United States, but in the name of globalist agendas. Remember when he said this?
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
Yeah, like this? Or this? Or this?
He's been boosted a total of 6 times.
Or this? Oh yeah, and just like the Jets' unlikely Super Bowl win over the Colts in 1969, the Patriots were 14-point underdogs to the greatest show on turf. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
Observer, you're the guinea pig, myself included. And we're moving along to the next scene of controlled opposition, where we see a locker for DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, and ICE in full camo, vests, baklavas, face masks, helmets, gloves, and some with rifles or sidearms. They're preparing themselves for their next big role in this facade of life. And just like the NFL players, they're all getting paid to play the game. Surrounding them, 3 different Super Bowl Roman numbers are shown, with the numbers representing Super Bowl 51, featuring the New England Patriots crushing the Atlanta Falcons, Super Bowl 58, where Kansas City beat the 49ers, and Super Bowl 52, where the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles. All brought to you by George Bush and the Patriot Act. Dig this, since 2001, the Patriots and Chiefs have played in 15 of the 25 Super Bowls. 60% of all Super Bowls since 2001 have featured these teams. What are the odds? I'll tell you. Mathematically, if every team had a 1 in 32 chance of making the Super Bowl every year, the odds of these specific 2 teams appearing 15 times would be minuscule, imperceptible, indistinguishable, indefinite, indiscernible, inappreciable. Okay, enough, we get it. Impalpable. So what's not being said is that the Super Bowl is a stage, and the real players are the federal agents and the secret observers who orchestrated events behind the scenes. Which brings us to the other players in this facade, a graffiti-covered locker room filled with black bloc Antifa-style protesters and symbols of left-wing, anti-establishment activism. So basically it's Antifa and we'll just say the flag people.
And I grew up a lot of homophobia. I grew up with a guy who hated gay people. He was obsessed with gay guys taking the rainbow. That was like his big beef. Took the rainbow. I don't know if they took it. They just made it their flag, and we all know God hates flags. But
you can see a blue-haired woman doing a staged selfie while shrieking so loudly it cracks the mirror in front of her, symbolizing self-destructive rage and or manufactured fury. What it's also saying is that the opposition is looking at itself, as I'll show you shortly. ACAB means all cops are bastards and is repeated multiple times. There's also a sign with the word illegal crossed out, likely meaning no to detaining illegals, or illegals welcome, or no to borders. What the scene is telling us is that both government and resistance are staged in the same arena, with the global elites funding, directing, and observing both the law enforcement side of DHS and ICE, as well as the protest side with Antifa, the flag people, activism, and anarchists, to create perpetual division, or as they would say in Freemasonry, ordo ab chaos, which means order out of chaos. And of course, what we're seeing on a bigger picture is the Hegelian dialectic, or as David Icke calls it, problem, reaction, solution, which always ends up with us begging the government to stop the bad guys.
The method they use is that of the Hegelian dialectic. Thesis played against antithesis leads to a synthesis. In other words, for Hegel, for history to make progress, you have to have conflict, because conflict leads to the new synthesis. You create opposing forces which you place in conflict. Out of conflict, you've got profit, you've got political power, and you can direct history.
And it doesn't matter which side the bad guys are on, they're both playing different roles for the same team. And this all boils down to the divide and conquer principle. My tribe against your tribe. And isn't this exactly what professional sports brings us? In American football, when Kansas City plays Dallas, it's literally the Cowboys versus Indians. Wake up, people. Ask yourselves, who's really playing this game? You're not just an observer. You're the guinea pig, myself included, behind the scenes. Which brings us to the next scene, where government agents in camo vests and baklavas are handing betting slips to the dealer/bookie who's representing government authority, law and order, and border security. On the right side, you have the Antifa protesters in hoodies and masks, with some wearing helmets. They're holding cash and placing bets representing resistance, anti-fascism, and activism. Above them is a betting board with Super Bowl LX 60. Below are the teams and logos for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security versus anti-fascist action. This scene shows us that DHS and ICE and Antifa are two teams in the same rigged game. While everyone's watching the big game, this is the real Super Bowl going on behind the scenes. What's not being said literally is that DHS, ICE, and Antifa are fake rivals betting on the same fixed game. He then leaves the sports parlor and poses with Kobe Bryant in front of a helicopter-themed slot machine. Many people believe his death was a ritual sacrifice, but I'll leave that for you to infer. They're posing in front of a brightly lit casino slot machine with 3 reels visible, each showing the word crash. Kobe Bryant died January 26, 2020, in a helicopter crash in California, along with his daughter Gianna and 7 others. The masked man serving as the global elite just happens to be there when Kobe hits triple crash on the slots. That's a simple metaphor about how easily situations can be controlled behind the scenes. Just like musicians and Hollywood celebrities, sports stars are expendable pawns in the elite game. The next to last scene shows DHS and Antifa ready for the game's kickoff, showing the true competitors that people refuse to see. The scoreboard literally says DHS versus Antifa and shows Super Bowl LIX 59, which featured the Chiefs against the Eagles. They're shown on the same playing field, despite being on different sides. The masked man representing the hidden powers is controlling the kickoff and, most likely, the entire game. The Super Bowl is a yearly ritual, no different than the Bohemian Grove or the Bilderberg meetings. Both sports and secret societies have their ritualistic robes or sports uniforms, ritualistic staging with checkerboard floors versus the sports arena, and controlled players on both sides. If you look at this scene, it's no different. While they openly oppose one another while wearing their easily identifiable ritualistic attire, behind closed doors, they all play for the same team with the same globalist agendas. And we think it's just a game. The more you know is the more you realize you don't know shit. One last thing I want to point out. I slowed down this last scene to follow the football. And what's interesting is a player magically appears and is running toward the end zone to score. Where did he come from? Check it out. Check it out again. I've seen this numerous times, and every time someone who was out of the picture or behind the scenes inexplicably ends up with the football and is about to score for the perceived good guys, but it never shows him actually scoring. Maybe that implies that the good guys win in the end, but either way, it's just a stage, and we're watching the greatest show on earth. Whether you want to be a rebellious actor or activist in this thematic play is up to you. I prefer to be the observer, sitting in the far corner of the back row, but every once in a while I'll play a small cameo role in this facade.